Council in session, please stand for the Worshipful, the Mayor of the Borough Decorum, Councillor Catherine McCreevy.
Thank you. So, good evening and welcome to this extraordinary meeting of the Council. I would ask members to remain respectful and to adhere to the rulings of the Mayor at all times. Can I ask that all persons present turn off any Wi-Fi hotspots on your phones or electrical devices, as this interferes with the meeting audio. Finally, I would like to remind everyone that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Photography may also take place as long as it does not prejudice the proceedings at this meeting. So, agenda item 1. Under announcements, I'm delighted to welcome Cadet Sergeant Russell Jakes, together with Flight Lieutenant Paul Mimpress from 1187 Hemel Hempstead Squadron of the Royal Air Force Cadets, who have joined us this evening. So if I could now ask Darren, do you have any announcements as Chief Executive?
Thank you. A by-election took place on Thursday, the 23rd of October 2025 to fill a vacancy on Kings Langley Parish Council in the North Ward. Simon Fancourt of the Conservative Party was elected. Thank you.
Thank you. I now invite the group leaders to give any apologies on behalf of their groups.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I give apologies on behalf of Will Yankowski.
Thank you.
Apologies on behalf of Councillor White, Lowe and Riddick.
Thank you.
No apologies here. Thank you.
Thank you. If I could ask our Democratic Services Officer to confirm if we have any other apologies.
We've received apologies from Councillors Tyndall, Wilkie and Capozzi.
Thank you. So, agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Members are reminded that if they have any interest in respect to the item on this evening's agenda, they should declare them now. So, agenda item 3, public participation. There is no public participation. Now moving to agenda item 4, local government reorganisation in Hertfordshire. Before I ask the Leader of the Council to introduce the report and move the motion as set out in the agenda, I want to take a moment to outline why this matter has been brought to full Council for debate and indicative vote tonight. As members will be aware, Cabinet is required to determine Decorum's preferred model of local government reorganisation at their meeting on Tuesday the 18th of November. Given the significance of this decision for the future governance of our borough, Cabinet felt it was important to be informed by the widest possible expression of member opinion. This extraordinary council therefore provides an opportunity for every member to participate in the debate, to set out their views and to indicate which option they believe best serves the interests of Decorum and our residents. I'm grateful to colleagues across the Chamber for engaging with this process, and I hope that this discussion will help guide Cabinet as it reaches its formal decision next week. Councillor Symington, if I could now please invite you to move the report. You have 10 minutes to do so.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to start by publicly thanking all the officers at Decorum Borough Council and at councils across the county, including Hertfordshire County Council, for the immense amount of time and hard work that's gone into the meetings, the engagement processes, and the analysis that sits behind and informs the documents shared with you on the 6th of November. these other documents. All this whilst continuing to deliver excellent services to our residents across Dacorum and focusing on the improvements we can make to people's lives by investing appropriately in our communities. So, thank you. I'd like to say I'd taken this as read, but I'm guessing, well, that's probably quite a big ask of everybody. It is an enormous piece of work. Local government reorganisation is a process the councils are to undertake by the government following the announcement of the English Devolution White Paper on the 16th of December of last year. It sets out the government's plans to devolve greater power and funding to local areas and to deliver local government reorganisation to all two-tier areas, which includes Hertfordshire. Whatever your views, this process has been forced upon us and welcomed by some to varying degrees. We can only hope and strive to make possible that it delivers better services for our residents in the long term, as in the short term, the costs in terms of high uncertainty and are very disruptive. Throughout the process, we've conducted extensive engagement with members through the cross-party members working group, through the scrutiny process at Finance and Resources, and at group and independence briefings by officers. As you're probably all aware, the ultimate decision will be taken by the Secretary of State in the summer of next year, following another public consultation next spring. As a council, we have aligned with our corporate priorities of community engagement by engaging with residents and partners so they have a real say in our services and the borough, service improvement and delivery, which we're hoping this will deliver, and running the council efficiently and putting residents at the heart of everything we do. We've been keeping these values front and centre of the process. We've also given due consideration to the government's criteria. Firstly, proposals should seek to establish a single tier of local government. Proposals should be for sensible economic areas with an appropriate tax base which does not create an undue advantage or disadvantage for one part of the area. I think that's important to remember that last part. Proposed unitary councils must be the right size to achieve efficiencies, improve capacity and withstand financial shocks. New councils should aim for a population of 500,000 or more, although it's recognised there may be certain scenarios where a lower figure could be considered. Unitary structures must prioritise the delivery of high quality and sustainable public services to citizens. Proposals should show how new structures will improve delivery service and avoid unnecessary fragmentation of services. Proposals should show how councils in the area have sought to work together in coming to a view. They should consider issues of local identity and cultural and historic importance and include evidence of local engagement. We're nearly at the end of this list. New unitary structures must support devolution arrangements, and new unitary structures should enable stronger community engagement and deliver genuine opportunity for neighbour empowerment. And I think that's an important issue. The Minister indicated he expected local leaders to work collaboratively and proactively, including by sharing information to develop robust and sustainable unitary proposals that are in the best interest of the whole area, rather than developing competing proposals. And across Hertfordshire, we have done just that. We are one of the few areas where we have one agreed document, the spine document. So we've cooperated, we have the spine document, and the document has been signed off financially by all 11 finance officers. So, looking at the options, we have the two unitary option, which sets out the greatest financial savings and the greatest financial resilience. It breaks up the huge social services for adults and children in the least disruptive way, aligning with the NHS. And it leaves education intact for the greatest number of residents while creating the fewest barriers. The three-unitary option gives greater local representation.
Would you like to swap mics with your colleague?
Oh, sorry. Sorry, is that mine?
Sorry, can I just interrupt? There is a hotspot on in the room. Please, it has got a name, and the name is Claire. I don't know who might have a hotspot on, but there is a hotspot on that's interfering with the audio. Yeah, I'll just add that. There you go.
Okay. Oh, thank you. No, that's you, Cindy. Is it? Oh, no. Oh, okay. So I think I got to the three-unitary option gives greater local representation and aligns economically with the routes into London by road and rail via Watford and to some extent Three Rivers. However, in the short to medium term, it disconnects Hemel Hempstead from much of the proposed Hemel Garden community. This is a vital part of the regeneration of the not-so-new town, and a boundary review will be required to align it under this proposal. And this request for a boundary review is not without risk. The four-unitary option keeps decorum with St Albans without requiring boundary changes, and from a local decorum point of view, this is positive. However, the other proposed unitaries that have been put forward on the basis of boundary changes along existing ward boundaries. And despite this, the proposals still leave one of the four unitaries requiring funding support from the other three. The costs of disaggregation are the most significant for this option, leaving council taxes potentially higher for longer. We've engaged extensively with both our strategic stakeholders and our residents. Our strategic stakeholders included Community Action Decorum, of which I have to declare an interest as I'm a trustee, Sunnyside Rural Trust, Dens, Boxmoor Trust, and Hightown Homes. They all contributed positively, and it was clear that there are strong relationships between them and their counterparts in neighbouring districts, especially Watford and Three Rivers. Our public engagement took place both online and in person at drop-in sessions at Hemel Hempstead, Berkhamsted and Tring. Many residents have found it difficult to envisage how the new authorities would operate, although they were all keen that local voices were heard. The government has proposed local area committees to supplement the new unitary authorities. In decorum, nearly half the borough is parished. However, there is no current local representation in Hemel, outside of Nash Mills. And to ensure that whatever the future arrangements look like, we will be bringing forward a proposal for a community governance review to ensure that Hemel Hempstead is not disadvantaged in future. We remain very much in the hands of the government as to the future governance structures in Hertfordshire, as this decision will ultimately be taken by the Secretary of State. The recent example of Surrey, a county with a similar population to Hertfordshire and geographically a bit larger, would indicate that sound and strong finances are important. As Liberal Democrats, we believe strongly in decisions being taken as close to the recipients of the services as possible. Therefore, it will be essential to ensure that local representation is maintained for those services delivered locally. So, this today is to hear, and it's very important to us that we hear the views of members, and I welcome all of your engagement in the process, through the scrutiny, through the public engagement, and I look forward to hearing your contributions tonight. I therefore move the consideration of this report and the options set out in the recommendation section of the report.
Thank you, Councillor Symington. Do I have a seconder?
I second that.
Thank you, Councillor Diani. As seconder, you may have a right to speak for up to 5 minutes and may reserve the right to do so until later in the debate. Do you wish to speak now or reserve your right?
Can I reserve my right to speak later? Thank you.
Yes, okay. I will now open the floor for debate. Members may speak once on this item for up to 5 minutes in accordance with the rule of debate. So, Councillor Williams, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I hope my voice holds up. Firstly, before I address the motion in question, I just want to say on behalf of the Conservative Group that we would like to put on record our support the comments that Councillor Sillington has made about the work that's gone into this and the considerable amount of time that officers have had to, across the county, have had to put into getting to where we are this evening. But also our frustration that we're going through this process which is distracting an awful lot of officer time, an awful lot of resource, and will have an effect upon services for the next 3 or 4 years potentially, all to fix something in Hertfordshire that certainly isn't broken in the first place. And therefore there's an awful lot of money to be wasted and time to be spent on something that we needn't be doing. But the fact is we are, because we've been forced into this situation. And then we consider the options that are before us, and if we, and without a doubt there is a balance to be struck, because none of them offer a perfect solution. If you wanted to look at the one that's most financially prudent, then we'd be looking at one. That was ruled out for other reasons. If you want to look at the options that are best for community engagement, for councillor-elector ratios, for bringing communities together and keeping communities of a recognisable size, then undoubtedly 4. And for decorum, the 3 is a very poor option in the sense that it doesn't align us with St Albans, which is I would argue, our most natural partner. And it also aligns us with councils which we feel have different values. For example, is that with St Albans and decorum, we've retained our housing stock. As with Watford and Three Rivers, they didn't consider their housing stock to be important and got rid of it as quickly as they could. We retain that the decorum's housing stock would be under threat for a similar reason if we were merged with 2 councils who don't attach the same importance to it as we do here. So we have to this evening make a recommendation on what we think is the best option, balancing off all those finances, because the financial modelling that we see in the report and the views we've expressed by the finance director effectively is as elastic as it can be. The finances of local government have never been certain. They haven't been certain for the last 20 years. And to predict 5 years ahead or 10 years ahead on the potential savings of any of these options is nigh on impossible. You know, I was here in 2000 when housing money was being transferred to the general fund, and the light at the end of the tunnel when everything was going to be okay and we were going to be, you know, financially self-sufficient was 2010. Well, we know when that light at the end of the tunnel turned out to be a train that derailed us for the next 10 years. So to predict in 10 years' time which one of these models will be financially beneficial is impossible. So let's look at what is best for the residents of decorum, what gives the best democratic accountability, and for the Conservative group, we've come to a view after careful consideration that the option that we will support is 4. We know that it will fall short of some of the government's criteria, but it will certainly fit others better, should I say. We should not make a decision based purely on ticking the number of boxes the government feels we should tick. I believe we should make a decision based on what we think is best for our residents. It may not be that suits every other council in Hertfordshire. There may be other configurations which suit councils in Hertfordshire, and it's for them to make that case. But for us, we should make a case for decorum, for our residents, for our services, and our geographic location. We firmly believe that a merger with St Albans, albeit reluctantly, is the best option for us. Moving slightly afield from that, so I'll give you a clear view of the Conservative option. Something that I've always held dear for the last 38 years that I've been in this chamber, or a chamber in decorum, is that council is sovereign. And when I led the cabinet for 24 years, I made it clear to anybody who joined my cabinet that at some point you will have to implement decisions which you may not agree with. Personally, they are decisions of council and we have no choice. I know this is not a Q&A, but I will ask the leader in summing up. Will she give an unequivocal guarantee to this council that the cabinet will abide and respect the sovereignty of this council when it makes its recommendation on behalf of decorum? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Mitchell, please.
The Labour Group supports the government's policy to align all resident services under one roof as part of a unitary authority model. This will make it easier for residents to access services as well as achieve significant cost savings by eliminating duplication. DBC councillors have been given the option of 3 different models of 2, 3 and 4 distinct unitary authorities, and the Labour Group will continue to support the proposal to create 4 unitary authorities. Although a 2 unitary model would potentially benefit from economies of scale, which has been shown by the DBC illustrative data, financials are just one of the 6 criteria set by the government, and it should not be given excessive weight. The Labour Group feels strongly that democracy must remain as localised as possible, and that the voices of people living in Dacorum should not be diluted and lost in a massive local government area in which residents would have to fight for necessary funding against London-facing districts that have very different needs. I'm proud to be part of this progressive change, as were my parents before me, when as councillors they signed the charter that created this borough. This next step is a logical evolution of local government. I would like to thank the officers of Dacorum and the leader of the council who have put so much time and effort into this project, and to recognise the extent that they have gone above and beyond their duty. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hannell, please.
Madam Mayor, I wish to state the reasons why the Labour Group is supporting the 4 unitary option. As councillors, our primary concern is representing our residents to the best of our ability. We know the areas we represent, we know the local challenges, and many in this place have been assisting residents with casework for many years. We are able to do this because each of us work at ward level, representing manageable numbers of residents, currently at a ratio of 1 councillor for every 2,251 electors. I'll be straight with you. My electorate in Bennett Centre lovable, but at times burdensome. The 4 unitary model is the only option which keeps representation at a manageable level, raising the ratio by only 13% to 1 councillor for every 2,552 electors, rather than using the proposed county division boundary under the 2 or 3 unitary authority, which raises that ratio by 70% to 1 councillor for every 3,828 electors. Our group would like to see more working people, and especially more working women, standing as councillors, bringing their valuable life experience to this place. Manageable areas of representation mean councillors will be able to keep workloads realistic while retaining the ability to enjoy family life and hold down a proper job. I was on a good roll then, wasn't I? The 4 unitary model places just Dacorum and St Albans City together as 2 councils in the M1 corridor. This makes sound geographic sense, and we'll be able to work together to build a shared sense of community. Indeed, we're already working together on combining Hemel Garden communities here in Dacorum with East Hemel in St Albans City into one greater Hemel Hempstead area. It is essential that Dacorum maintain that focus exclusively with St Albans, for those plans are already at an advanced stage to deliver a considerable number of new affordable homes, schools, neighbourhood centres and GP services. Following the initial consultation, it is clear that more residents support the 4 option than any other. It's a model that keeps local government linked to connected geographic boundaries. I believe we should follow the recommendations of the residents that we are here to serve. The government set out a number of criteria, of which finance is just one. I concede that the 2 option works better financially in terms of swifter payback, but only the 4 option delivers on the other criteria. Boundaries that make sense, allowing flexibility for economic growth in each of the 4 unitary areas. And also, we will have the confidence that we will have the support from our residents and allow a reconfiguration of public services to better suit the local needs of residents both here and in St Albans. The 4 unitary model proposes council size of around 300,000. This would be in the upper third in terms of size of current unitary councils, many of which perform extremely well. The district council network has found that there is no correlation between population size and financial sustainability or positive outcomes for residents. A 4 model with a strategic authority mayor for the whole of Hertfordshire allows for greater flexibility in housing, transport and service provision to suit the needs of each unitary authority area. It is important that the will of our residents is represented and we are speaking on their behalf. The Labour group will be very disappointed if the Liberal minority administration does not carry through their cabinet on Tuesday next week the majority vote of this council, as this meeting is an expression of which model has the most support. I will urge all members here not to divide our community and back the 4 unitary model, which would ensure that residents in Dacorum continue to be prioritised by a council that truly represents them. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's interesting how I think some members are approaching the same option from slightly different angles. As one of the, I think, 4 councillors who have served on this council for over 25 years, including Councillor Williams, this whole subject obviously fills me with sadness and despair, both at the injustice of it and the reduction in local democracy. If ever there was a case of one size not fitting all, this would be it, with the nature of Hertfordshire being completely inappropriate for the unitary model of local government. Instead of the hub and spoke distribution one would need to make unitaries work geographically, the county is made up of quite a number of towns, roughly the same size, and serving mostly as dormitories for London. One of the government's requirements for this exercise is that the geography of the new unitaries would have to make sense, and none of the options identified do this. As if to demonstrate this, none of the options in the exercise have identified where the new authorities would be centred, which is an interesting point. I too applaud the efforts that have been put into estimating the costs and savings involved. However, the calculations are based on a shed load of assumptions which I'm afraid, one has to, under any challenge, call weak. For example, that the government grants would continue as is. It's just one example of the many, many assumptions. And whilst the calculation methodology was the same in evaluating the different options to give a relative picture, I cannot get over the conceptual flaw in the argument that this exercise could save money, never mind enough to pay for itself. Namely, irrespective of the economy of scale at the district level, I cannot see how merging the county's less expensive public services could save enough money to pay for multiplying the county's most expensive public services and the transition costs. Turning to the options, I cannot support the 2 councils' options as it would breach the government's requirements for population size and as it would take services the furthest away from the public. Some may see the 3 councils' option as a so-called Goldilocks option, but I'm afraid I see it like the last sweets in the tin option. Namely, the one that nobody wants because it does nobody any favours. Never mind issues over having to move the St Albans boundary for the Hemel Gardens project. Nobody is saying the 4 councils' options is ideal, but in my view, it's the one that conserves at least some vestige of local democracy and limits the damage as much as possible. In summary, I don't think there is anybody with any, this is harsh words, but there is anybody with any credibility who can seriously say hand on heart that this is a good or appropriate exercise in Hertfordshire's case, or represents devolution instead of centralisation, because it is not and clearly represents centralisation. However, I am worried that people are helping to make the damage happen by over-accepting that the damage is going to happen. I therefore take the view that in responding to the government's consultation, the council needs to say that the exercise does not work in Hertfordshire's case, to say why it does not work, and only to suggest whichever option is chosen this evening as a fallback position. That way, one is trying to prevent the damage without refusing to engage in the process and making the best of the bad situation by selecting an option. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Binder, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We've all read reports and, well, we haven't all read reports, but, read reports or attended presentations where there's been a lot of information and empirical data presented, but it seems to have been based on, at this stage, a lot of ifs, buts, maybes and assumptions, as many parameters and criteria seem uncertain at the moment, and those that might be certain are almost certainly going to change over the next few years. For me, maintaining democracy and public representation are paramount, despite the fact that today the most democratic option is perhaps the least financially favourable. I therefore also ask members to consider why we are here and the potential implications adversely affecting democracy and public representation of choosing an option that compromises that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Guest, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. During the County Council election campaign this year, people raised all sorts of issues with me on the doorstep. They raised provision for children with special educational needs and disabilities. They raised parking problems. They raised house building. And they raised an issue that no council, county, borough or unitary can do anything about: immigration. No one said they were desperate for local government reorganisation. However, this is being forced upon us, and we owe it to the people of Dacorum and the wider Hertfordshire to get it right. The two unitary authority model would be just lines on a map drawn by bureaucrats with no recognition of historic boundaries or community affinity. It would create unitary authorities that would be too remote, with no tier of local government below them that has teeth, as in the current model of the 10 boroughs and districts across the county with the county council over it. The three unitary model would be the worst of all worlds. It would take away local representation, as in the two unitary model, and it would put Hemel Hempstead in with Three Rivers and Watford. There's already a feeling in the community that Hemel Hempstead is losing its identity to Watford. After losing our acute hospital, the feeling is that it would be losing its identity as well to Watford if the three unitary model were adopted. Those are not my words. They're the words of ordinary people in the community, ordinary people like Elizabeth in Gadebridge. The three unitary model would mean the splitting of St Albans and Hemel Hempstead. It would mean that a boundary review request would be required for Hemel Garden communities. It is possible that the Secretary of State could refuse that request. The four unitary authority model is small enough to be local across the county. It would ensure democratic representation. It would keep Hemel Hempstead and St Albans together. It is the option to go for to ensure local representation, certainty and community, so I will be supporting it.
Thank you. Councillor Gale, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Like many people here, I grew up in Hertfordshire. Our county benefits from its diversity of people, landscapes and environments. I'm going to quote from the Spine document because I agree with what it says here. Hertfordshire's strength lies in the diversity of its places. Our county brings together assets and identities that are distinctive and complementary, from historic market towns to new towns and garden cities, from creative industries to bioscience clusters, and from chalk streams to commuter corridors. They all work together to form a county with a strong civic identity, a varied and high-performing economy, and communities that are proud of where they live. I was educated under the auspices of Herts County Council, and I benefited hugely from the Hertfordshire Music Services, with a variety of activities for youth, which was one of the finest in the country. And it had a large area and a large population and a large pool of talent from which to select the very best. That's education. It's important because it's our future. And I agree with Councillor Williams insofar as he says that if it's not broke, why should we spend all this time fixing it? And it's Hertfordshire's size and Hertfordshire's diversity that's part of its strength. Now, taking the big ticket items that will be for these unitary authorities, education and health, the economies of scale are not just financial. They will provide a unified and certain service. There'll be more equality, less of a postcode lottery, more potential for those with the broadest shoulders to carry the burden, more social cohesion than if we enclose ourselves off into smaller parochial units. Depending on which authority you live in, you'll get a varied service. Anybody who's lived near the border of a rich or a less well-off authorities will know. If you live on the border between Warwickshire and Northampton, for example, there's a big gradation of services there. And chopping up Hertfordshire like that is going to cause that. Now, for the future, I think I have to agree that Hertfordshire will be too big for a unitary authority. The population will increase. Councillor Williams saying there's no need for this. I'm not sure I fully agree with him there. I see the need to cut Hertfordshire down, cut it in half, but no more than that. Looking at the options appraisal overview from Spine, it's not just financial. You can see there are all of the criteria, or not all, but many of the criteria. Sensible geography and economic area, the right size to generate efficiencies and absorb shocks. The 2-unit delivers organisations with significant financial scale. It has the highest savings and the fastest payback. It'll enable the people of Hertfordshire to get the biggest bang for their buck. And that's important, not to be sniffed at this time of rising costs. It's got quality and sustainable services. A single split of county services into east and west areas will require no realignment due to boundary review. The thing that people are saying more is that smallest areas create somehow more democracy. So if you have more councillors, then you have more democracy. But that analysis is superficial. There isn't just more accountability in smaller areas. We need councillors who are going to work for people and who are going to be effective. So if you have lots of councillors and they're all split between lots of different committees, lots of different authorities, they're not going to have much time. However it's divided, regardless of the shape of the new authority, there'll be a need to have a conversation about more local governments anyway. Many areas will still have 2 tiers. There are parish councils, town and city councils. This will be a good opportunity with the larger unitary authorities to discuss whether, for example, the expanded Hemel Hempstead will need a town council. Chopping up the county into small pieces will be a recipe for unwanted variation in services, patchy provision and possible postcode lottery. I hope that the Secretary of State does not throw the baby out with the bathwater and refrains from hacking Hertfordshire into more pieces than is necessary. So option A, the 2 unitary authorities, is obviously the right choice.
Thank you. Councillor Greenfield, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I note that many members in this House are talking about being forced to make this change, but I was also very happy to hear that local representation and staying in contact with our residents is at the heart of everything that we're talking about. I've not yet completed my first year as a councillor, and I would say that about half of the contacts I receive from residents are for things that as a borough councillor I have no control over. I do not believe it should be the responsibility of our residents to work out how to access the services and who they need to contact in order to do that. So personally, I believe the move to bring these 2 together in unitary authorities will benefit our residents. I also believe that staying local will allow them to see councillors who live in their areas that they can relate to, which is why I personally, in line with the Labour group, will support the 4-unit proposal.
Thank you. Councillor Madden, please.
Thank you. Firstly, I'd like to make my feelings clear that a unitary authority is absolutely not what I would choose. For me, tonight is about voting for the least bad option. My experience over 16 years in local government is that the work County Council does is less hands-on and more strategic than the very personal and intimate nature of a borough council. That is, of course, except things like adult care, children's social care, and so on. Borough covers so many areas where the officers and borough councillors have a real and genuine connection with our residents. Not all, of course, and only really when they need us. But when they do, they really do. My very real worry is that we will lose this personal level of caring for our community the bigger we get. Can I thank the team that prepared the detailed report in tonight's agenda? The report mentions that there was a shared view against a single unitary, as it was deemed to be too remote from the county's diverse communities. It also states that having unitary councils of a population of 500,000 or more was referred to as a guiding principle, not a hard target. Having read much of the tome that is the submission document and attended the LGR meetings, I'd like to share my views on the three options. So I think that splitting the county into two unitaries would be almost as bad as the dismissed single unitary option, because the diverse communities are no different. Some of the very southern areas that border London boroughs are so different from the rural communities, be they in North Herts or Bridgewater. Planning, housing, business, support, all these decisions are made by officers and members using local knowledge, which is impossible when the area is so huge. However, splitting into three would, in my opinion, be the biggest mistake of all. To align Dacorum, a largely rural borough, with Watford, almost entirely urban and more aligned with the London boroughs, in preference to St Albans, is, in my opinion, madness. And I'm speaking from experience. I've lived in 4 London boroughs and I lived in Watford for 7 years. St Albans and Dacorum both have a substantial council housing stock. We both have a large town or city with well-defined edges, surrounded by green belt, with market towns, rural villages and open space. We're likely to lose our true social housing stock with 2 or 3 unitaries because the other councils have offloaded theirs already. But the biggest issue with a 3 unitary authority is that this divides Hemel Garden communities, leaving the part with Hemel and the other part bolted onto us, where the adjoining council will collect all the tax. We get the headache of the congestion and infrastructure problems. The school's catchment areas in HGC will be split across 2 authorities, and the residents will inevitably need to use our services. For example, while East Hemel is planning space for doctors' surgeries, there's no guarantee that any doctor would choose to actually take on a surgery there, so we could all get the headache of the overcrowding with no reward. To suggest that voting for 3 and writing a letter asking the government nicely to give us the HGC land is at best naive. There will, of course, be a counter-argument from SADC for the land to be kept, because they need the projected housing numbers in HGC, or they will need to find somewhere else to build. The added complication is that this land is not in 1, but 2 parish council areas within SA land. This would have to be changed, because you can't split parishes across 2 unitaries. I believe the decision to do that would have to come before the unitary is implemented, but I might be wrong, so would need to be proposed, consulted and agreed by St Albans District Council with support from both parishes. Why would they do that when they don't benefit? The 4 unitary option is the only one that works for me. It cannot only be about money. In my opinion, we must keep the connection with our residents to so need a small authority. We must stay with St Albans because it's the only nearby council with a correlation to Dacorum, and it's the only one that will work with wards rather than bigger areas. The 2 and 3 unitary authorities both require 3 councillors to do the work. I can't vote for either, so I'm voting for the least bad option, which is 4 unitaries. I sincerely hope you're not all being whipped and can vote with common sense and conscience tonight.
Thank you. Councillor Hobson, please.
Thank you. I'm not going to rehearse or rehash the very the detailed response that has come from my colleagues to my left. I just really wanted to make a comment on tactics. That we should be voting what's best for our residents in terms of local democracy and accountability. And we shouldn't be caving in just because we think the government's going to go for one option and it's a lost cause. So we should just vote with what we think the government has already decided. I don't think that does the right thing for our residents. I had the same view when we were talking about the local plan. I felt that we caved in when actually what was best for us was to go with the previous plan, just as an example. So the arguments have been well made on culture and synergies and what's manageable for representing and supporting our residents best, which is the unitary model. So that was really just the only point I wanted to make. I think it's important. We should be looking at scale facts, we should be voting what we think that's for residents.
Thank you. So, before I invite a mover, I just want to, before I invite the mover to exercise their right to reply, first of all, I want to check that all members who've indicated they wish to speak. Apologies for the sound. I am aware. Just. I'm just waiting for the sound to be sorted before moving on. Does that work?
That sounds a bit better.
Okay. So I just want to check before I go back to Councillor Diani, has everyone exercised their right to speak or would like to? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As I seconded the motion, I would like to speak. Is this okay? Yeah, thank you. Like many colleagues here tonight, I wish we didn't have to restructure at all. And I hear the room and I think we're doing fine. But we've been given a clear mandate from government to choose one of the three options before us. And while none of them are perfect, we have a duty to make a decision that delivers the best outcome for Dacorum and for Hertfordshire as a whole. I understand Dacorum is first, but we have to now start thinking that we're merging in services which was provided by Hertfordshire. After looking carefully at the evidence and the work that has been done by officers, so far I believe the two unitary model is the most balanced, practical and future-proofed option. First, financially. It delivers the highest level of saving. I know colleagues in the room believe that we shouldn't believe those paperwork because if the paperwork for finances didn't work in the past, why should they work now? But that's at least something done, not just by Dacorum, but many other district councils. And for us, financially, this is the most viable option to go for. And that matters because every pound saved through efficiency is a pound we can reinvent back into our towns, our communities, and the services we provide to our residents. Secondly, it offers a way to reduce fragmentation in key areas like education, adult social care, and children's services. The more we divide the county, the harder it becomes to maintain the consistency and quality in those vital services. Thirdly, unlike other proposals, the two unitary model doesn't require boundary change, which for some reason feel like missing off this room tonight. It removes a huge layer of uncertainty as we're relying if we go to the option 3 or 4. For residents, for schools, for families who are already navigating complex systems of admission, education, their need for their children, and so on, avoiding that disruption means we can focus on improving the services straight on, not redrawing the maps again. It's also important that Dacorum and St Albans remain within the same unitary as our shared priorities, particularly the Hemel Garden community and the local plan. And it depends hugely on our close collaboration. The 3 unitary model could have offered a reasonable balance in theory, but it doesn't include St Albans and Dacorum together. And that separation would make coordinated growth and infrastructure planning far more difficult, and it would trigger, again, a boundary review in the future. Again, creating uncertainty for the resident and delaying delivery of the key projects. Finally, I want to recognise that through the public engagement, it has shown that many residents don't feel they fully understand the implication of any of the options. And that's understandable. It is a complex process, but our responsibility is to make the best judgment we can in this room and in our decision making. And they should be based on the facts, the risk, and the long-term benefit for our communities. To ensure that local representation remain strong under any future structure, whatever outcome we get out of LGR, we are committed to undertake a community governance review. We are living through one of the toughest periods, which is called cost of living crisis, and yet we undermine the value of finances. It would be unwise to overlook the importance of putting our finances in the strongest possible shape through this restructuring. So while no option is perfect, the 2 unitary model gives us the opportunity to secure stability, deliver efficiency, and ensure least disruption for our residents. For those reasons, I would like to second the motion and propose we choose to go for the 2 unitary model. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now invite the leader as mover of the motion to give their right of reply. Councillor Symington, you have 10 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I want to thank everybody for their contributions tonight. I think it's been a very positive meeting. I really welcome that. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. The purpose of this extraordinary meeting was to hear the views of members and, you know, as I said, thank you very much those who have contributed. We've heard a lot of voices for the 4 model, and we've also heard some voices for the 2 model. I haven't heard anybody in this chamber speak for the 3 model, and I think the relationship with St Albans...
Sorry, can we just be respectful because we are listening? Thank you.
Just when it was going so well and I'd said nice things about the meeting. As I said, the purpose of this meeting is for us to take away the responses that we've been given. Before I get onto some of them, I just really want to pick up what Councillor Hannell said about wanting more women to stand for election. I also want more women to stand for election. I think it's really, really important. But as a woman, I can tell you that firstly, it shouldn't be that women don't stand because they have all the caring responsibilities, because I think the younger generation are moving on and actually have a much more equal way of sharing those responsibilities. The real reason why women don't stand is because of the way they're treated in politics, not by you, and this is nothing personal, but I think it should be noted that women are not treated well in the political environment. And that is one of the major reasons why they don't stand for election. But absolutely take on board the hours that people are going to have to work in this new role, however many unitaries they are, will be a determining factor on who is available to stand, who has the time and capacity to do it. So I want to pick up on one of the other comments, and I'm sorry if I can't attribute it to the right person, but it is really important. Where would the local authority be centred? Well, whether it's 2 or 3, which we think is unlikely, or 4 unitaries, the centre should be in Hemel Hempstead. And I hope that this is one thing that everyone in this chamber can get behind and agree with, that we would like this to be the centre of whatever new authority Dacorum is based in. I think Councillor Madden asked this. I'm happy to declare it, and I was going to say it anyway. Our group has a free vote tonight. For us, it is an absolute priority that we put residents first, and that we are able, as representatives, and whether we're representatives or delegates, and there is a balance between those two, that we can express the will of our best judgment. And let's face it, how many residents really are going to have had the chance to go through this? How many of you have really been able to take on board this? I know it's easy to dismiss it, but it is a model. Okay, I'm a physicist. Physics works on models. Okay, nothing is perfect, but you have to have a model to work to. And as Simi said, it's incredibly important in a cost of living crisis that we do not dismiss the financial model and the financial impact on longer term on our residents of having higher council taxes than are strictly necessary when there are economies of scale and there are better ways of delivery. And it isn't just about that, it's about being able to deliver those services across a wider area. As I said, so we have a free vote, and absolutely everybody in my group, in the Liberal Democrat group, will be voting with their conscience and putting their residents first. Councillor Anderson, I think you were concerned that we should be telling the government that this isn't suitable for Hertfordshire. I think up to a point you have a point. All I would say is we had working cross-party working group running all the way through this process, and at no point did anybody raise that with me or in the group. So this is quite late in the process when to be delivering a message like that back to the government would require all the group leaders and effectively the council to agree that that was what we would be wanting to do. So although I hear what you say, and I think you have a strong point, it's quite late in the process and I'm not sure that we can be accommodating that. I think I picked up most of the main points. As I said, I really want to thank everybody for their contributions. We're here to listen to them. I think it's clear that there are people in my group, and I will be one of them, that support on balance. And I think probably one of the things that we do all agree in the chamber is that we don't actually want to do this. It isn't what we would choose to be doing, but we are required to bring forward a single option for this council. And to Councillor Williams' point, we will take away everything that we've heard, and the Cabinet will be fully cognizant of the will of this chamber, however everybody votes. And I say, as a parting shot, as I said, my group, the Liberal Democrat group, have a free vote. I hope that everybody else has a free vote and that they can vote with their consciences what they believe is the best for the residents in Dacorum. And the Cabinet will listen to the will of the Council.
Thank you. So that concludes the debate. We will now move to the indicative vote. As members are aware, the electronic system... Excuse me, is there a problem?
Yeah, we want to call for a recorded vote.
Sorry.
Here.
Sorry, I move that the vote be a recorded vote. I don't know if this is the right
We
time to do
need
it.
to have 3 people. No, we haven't quite got there, but if the infuser... Okay, lots of people want a recorded vote. We've got more than 3. Okay, thank you. I wondered what had happened there. I looked down and suddenly heard lots of noise. So, back to where we were. So, as members are aware, the electronic system cannot accommodate bespoke options. So the vote will be conducted using the paper voting slips placed at your seats. You each have 4 coloured voting slips. An orange slip is to be used to vote for option A. Your slip is marked as option 1. Use the orange slip to vote for the 2 unitary model. A purple slip to be used to vote for option B. Your slip is titled option 2. You use the purple slip to vote the 3 unitary model. A green slip to be used to vote for option C. Your slip is titled option 3. Use the green slip to vote the 4 unitary model. Finally, you will also have a white slip to be used if you wish to abstain. Please ensure that you are using the slips displaying your name. Please select the slip that corresponds to your preferred option and ensure you sign only one slip. Once you have signed your chosen slip, please place it next to your microphone at the edge of your desk so that it is clearly visible for collection by Democratic Services during the vote. Please leave any unused slips to one side. These will be collected and securely disposed of at the close of the meeting. Hopefully none of you want me to repeat that. Okay, so you all understand, you're all clear which slips. Okay. Oh, Councillor England wants me to repeat by the looks of it. How can I help?
It's a legacy hand.
Thank you. At this point, I could sing, but I won't. So I'll now ask Democratic Services to complete the count overseen by the monitoring officer. Once verified, I will announce the result. That can't be right. Thank you. The result of the indicative vote is as follows. Those voting for option A, 2 unitary model, is 16 votes. Those voting for option B, 3 unitary model, is 0 votes. Those voting for option C, 4 unitary model, is 26 votes. Those who abstained is 0 votes. Therefore, Council resolves to recommend to Cabinet the submission of recommendation C as the preferred option for the quorum. Thank you. That concludes the business of this evening's meeting.